Now, from CBS News Miami, this is Facing South Florida with Jim DeFede.
Welcome to Facing South Florida. I'm Jim DeFede. Or maybe I should try a different greeting going forward. Welcome to Florida, the center of the Trump universe. We have Florida Senator Marco Rubio as Secretary of State. Former Florida Attorney General Pam Bondi is now tapped to be the U.S. Attorney General, but only after Florida Congressman Matt Gaetz, who had been chosen by Trump to be his original AG pick, had to withdraw because of all the allegations of drug-fueled sex parties with underage girls, which Gaetz denies. Another Florida Congressman, Mike Waltz, will be Trump's national security advisor, and longtime Florida political veteran Susie Wiles will be Trump's chief of staff. Kash Patel, who Trump wants to lead the FBI, used to be a public defender here in South Florida before becoming a deep state conspiracy theorist. And then there is Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, who may or may not become Trump's defense secretary. Now, as we are taping this Friday afternoon, Trump's pick to be defense secretary, Pete Hegseth, remains the pick. But as the nomination is clearly in trouble, who knows how that's going to happen? And oh yeah, let's not forget Trump's daughter-in-law, Lara Trump, now wants to be picked to replace Rubio in the Senate, even though she's only lived in Florida for 3 years. So let's be just absolutely clear about this. Florida is the Trumpiest state in the country. This week, I spoke to Evan Power, the chairman of the Republican Party here in Florida, to get his perspective.
Well, you know, Florida has been the beacon of freedom for the rest of the country for the last couple of years. It's been the conservative model. And so now it seems like they want take our talent from Florida to fix the nation. And it's made us the epicenter of the political universe for a time being.
A lot of that, though, is also the comfort of people. Donald Trump has adopted Florida as his home, you know, so he has these. So with Mar-a-Lago sort of being the center of power, the folks who come through there tend to also be a lot of Florida people, whether it's State Senator Joe Gruters, Pam Bondi, you go through the list, you know, there's a lot of those folks who he sees on a regular basis. And I think that plays a large part of it, too.
Oh, I think that is true. And I mean, people have made those treks down to Mar-a-Lago for those reasons. But, you know, we're blessed with having a very deep bench here in Florida. So when we lose these leaders to the federal government, we have people ready to step up and lead and lead in that conservative Florida mold. As
we're talking, and we're taping this on Friday, Pete Hegseth is still the nominee for Secretary of Defense. But the speculation about Ron DeSantis nevertheless continues. Why do you think Ron DeSantis would be interested in becoming defense secretary as opposed to remaining the governor of Florida for 2 more years?
Well, I mean, obviously, it's an honor to be tapped into the administration in any role. So he'd be willing to step up in that. If he's willing to step into that role, it's a great feather in his cap for the work he's done here in Florida. You know, I don't know where we're going. I think that the secretary or the potential secretary is going to keep fighting at the moment. And, you know, I think that the Senate should deliver the confirmations for the president's picks, because that's why we elected 53 Republican senators.
It's interesting because the domino effect of some of these other picks, obviously, Matt Gaetz didn't work out, but that congressional seat is now open. Representative Waltz is going to become the national security advisor. And so, you know, that congressional seat is open. I know that there are candidates for that. Jimmy Patronis is running for the Gaetz seat. You know, Randy Fine, State Senator Randy Fine, is running for the seat that Waltz is vacating. They both have Donald Trump's support. But that then starts a game of dominoes. How complicated does this, as all the pieces start getting moved around the board here in Florida, as people start resigning and running in other locations, how complicated is that for you as the party chair?
Well, I woke up the day after the election, and then I told my wife that we were going to have a little more time after the election, and that's turned out not to be the case. So we're going to have a bunch of special elections. Obviously, they're going to be staggered because the vacancies occur at different periods of time. But what I will say is that we're already hard at work getting vote by mail requests in, registering more Republican voters so that we're going to be able to defend those seats and get good, talented individuals into those seats, and so that we can continue to lead Florida forward.
Are you concerned that there's going to be a fair amount of infighting within the Republican ranks as we start looking towards 2026, both with regard to the governor's race and potentially, well, we will have a race, you know, a special election for the U.S. Senate seat, whoever the governor appoints to replace Marco Rubio will have to run in 2026 for the remainder of Marco's term. Are you concerned that Republicans are in such a dominant position that for a lot of your folks that they're going to have to just start fighting each other and eating their own?
Well, I'm a big believer in always running like you're 10 points behind. So that's why we're already out registering voters and doing the things that we need to do as a party. I think we're going to have some primaries because obviously whoever wins our primary is the odds-on favorite to become that elected official. So we're going to have primaries. And so we're going to have to go through that process but we'll be ready for the general election. I think it's important for us to continue to work every day to make sure that we defend those majorities that we have. We defended the super majorities for the first time this year, and we've never gone through a massive cabinet swing without losing a cabinet race. So hopefully in 2026, when we talk after the election, we will be able to defend all those cabinet spots and have Republicans elected from top to bottom.
I'm curious, as I've pondered the results of last November, and by the way, it's only been a month, and it seems like it's been years since the November 5th election, but it's only been a month. And the incredible gains that Republicans did make here across the state of Florida, the one area where you didn't make the headway that I thought you could have, is there regret that you didn't get more actively involved in the Miami-Dade mayor's race? It seems to me that not really fielding a particularly strong candidate, not picking a high-profile candidate, not really offering large financial support for a candidate allowed Mayor Danielle Levine Cava to win outright in the primary back in August. My guess is that if she had to face, if it was a crowded enough field and she had to face a runoff in November, given how well that Donald Trump did and other Republicans did across Dade County, I think Republicans would have taken the mayor's seat here in Miami-Dade. Any regret that you didn't play more actively in that race?
I don't disagree with your analysis. I think we won Miami-Dade by a number that we hadn't seen since 1988. It was kind of unprecedented. I got elected less than a year ago and kind of got thrown into this role on short notice. So there are places we probably left opportunities on the field, but that's why we're starting immediately right now on registering and getting the party apparatus up and running again quickly so that we don't leave opportunities on the field in the future. But I think you're going to see us compete in Miami-Dade pretty strongly moving forward. I think that we have a potential to flip Miami-Dade County registration-wise down the road, as well as flipping Hillsborough and Duval County, because we're going to keep the machine running and we're going to continue to make Florida more and more red every time.
I know it's not your place to do it, but what advice, if any, would you give your Democratic counterpart? I know, other than keep doing what you're doing from your perspective, where do you think the Democratic Party organizationally has gone wrong? I'm not talking, some of it's policy, but some of it's also the blocking and tackling of politics. Where do you think the Democratic Party has gone wrong? I'm curious as to your perspective.
So how I see it is we've gone from a tier 1 to a tier 2 state, which means we're not a battleground state anymore. And so in 2020, for example, the Republican Party had 220 field staffers on the ground that were paid for by the RNC. This cycle, we had 2 or 3 at different times. So the Democrats had the same experience. And what we did was empower our grassroots and our county parties, gave them the materials they needed to go out and work and to be our field staff, since we didn't have that influx of cash and people. I think the Democrat Party doesn't have a DEC in every county. So we start there and we have an advantage because they don't compete in some of the rural counties. And then I think that they have not particularly done a great job of giving their counties resources and have them work. And then also I think the messaging problem is a problem for them, because what we're finding is they don't talk about issues that Floridians care about.
As you look ahead towards the legislative session, I still realize we're still a few months away, and I'm sure you and I will talk before then, but where do you see the priorities, likely to come from? And it goes back to my earlier question too about why would Ron DeSantis be interested in the job of defense secretary and giving up the role of governor of the state of Florida? There's this perception that as Ron DeSantis begins the final 2 years, you have a legislature that seems more and more aggressive in wanting to sort of reclaim some of the power, or shift back at least some of the power that they think they've lost over the last 6 years because Ron DeSantis was so dominant. I think there's a belief, whether it's the new speaker, Danny Perez, the new Senate president, Ben Albritton, that while they want to work with the governor, they may be less deferential to the governor. Do you think that's part of the equation here too?
I don't think that is. I think what we learned in the amendments, when we fought the amendments, the governor has a lot of power still, and the governor is very in tune with what the voters care about. And I think, you have these personality things, that these rumors that happen, but what I've seen from the legislature is they've delivered conservative policy, and that's what the governor wants. It's not necessarily his way or the highway. We want to move the ball forward, and I think both the speaker and Senate president are ready to move the conservative agenda forward. And, I think the governor will play a big role in that if he stays here.
It's not his way or the highway? Come on.
It's always been.
When I can give you, we can cite examples. I didn't really think you'd argue about how when the governor says jump, the legislature says how high, whether it's on the issue of the reapportionment of congressional districts. He canceled that because he didn't like the legislative maps, and legislators were angry, but they knuckled under and did it. And the 6-week abortion ban, you and I both know there were a lot of very uncomfortable Republicans who voted for a 6-week abortion ban when they were fine with it still being at 12 or 15 weeks. So I think on issues like Disney, I think the legislators I talk to anyway feel a little bit like they're second-class citizens, and they're looking forward to reasserting themselves a bit.
Well, I think they've led a conservative agenda, and that's why we were able to defend the supermajorities, is because they delivered big policy victories that Republicans and Floridians wanted. So, I think you always have these personality fights, and we can go back to talking about Jeb and how he worked with the legislature also. But I think, governors use their power and the legislature use their power. And what has happened is Florida's been a winner because of that conservative policy being pushed forward.
When we come back, we will continue this conversation with political reporter and all-around Florida man, Mark Caputo. Stay with us.